Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at the Froslass Generations deck. The Froslass Generations deck works around the drag along ability. If this Pokemon is your active Pokemon and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's deck, flip a coin. If heads, the attacking Pokemon is knocked out. Old players may remember this ability appearing on the Gengar from Stormfront, a very infamous card for its ability to just end games if you get a little unlucky with its fainting spell ability. It later came back on Chandelure from Phantom Forces, and has recently come back on a Cursola from Rebel Clash. But the reason you use Froslass over Cursola is because of its 90 HP marker, which is very big. Now, I originally saw this deck on the expanded ladder about a year ago. It's not my original idea. However, I didn't get a list for it, so I built this one from scratch, kind of just going off of what I remembered from the deck. I built it only about 2 weeks ago, and I've only gotten to play it about 10 times because with school starting, I have had no time to play PTCGO. So, going off of just some incremental testing, I've been going in and out of cards, seeing how it works, and we're working with this list. So, let's get on to the cards. We played 4 copies of the Snorunt. This one is from Guardians Rising. I played this one because of the art, simply. There's basically no Snorunt that you gain a particular advantage from, other than the fact you want to use a 60 HP one instead of a 50 HP one. And all the 60 HP ones, this one's also got great artwork, by the way. This one's not bad. This one is alright, too. You know what? Snorunt's got a lot of good art. You can use any of the 60 HP ones. They work. Of course not from Diamond and Pearl Arceus, but anything in the expanded format with 60 HP will work. Just don't play either the 50 HP ones because they're easier to knock out. And obviously 4 copies of Froslass as well. Your main build around is that drag along ability. We play 2 copies of the Farewell Letter Unknown, and you do see that we play Rescue Carrier. Not only is this for Rescue Carrier, but it's not your main build around, is it's also for Cyllene. And we'll get to Cyllene in a second, but it allows you to draw the card that you get with Cyllene, allowing Cyllene to be more effective, and the early game can help with draw with Rescue Carrier. So, 2 unknowns, pretty good. I wouldn't play more than 2. Play 1 copy of Pyukumuku. It's got the same kind of reason to be played in this deck. It's not as reusable as Unknown, but essentially turns you into a 59 card deck, and then it also helps with Cyllene. The reason that you'd play Pyukumuku instead of just playing a 3rd Unknown is because of its search ability with our auxiliary search, Dive Ball. Obviously, our primary search is going to be Level Ball since everything is searchable with it, but Dive Ball allows us to get Pyukumuku, but not Unknown. So that's why I did that in particular. You could run Quick Ball or Ultra Ball. I want to be able to get everything in the deck, though, and Unknown's the least important thing to get, so Dive Ball works for getting everything else. I did play Mr. Mime here at one point, and I don't think it was very good, so I removed it. So, yeah. This deck just does take some auto losses to, like, Shadow Rider with its 5 pings. You're going to hear that a lot when I'm talking about, control strategies. The 5 pings on Shadow Rider really just destroy any kind of fun decks. Shadow Rider, kind of flounders in the meta against all the big decks. Just hit them for, like, 300, but after, like, 5 turns. But, like, these small decks can't handle the Shadow Rider V's 5 pings. We play 4 copies of Steven's Resolve. Considering you're not attacking with this deck, ending your turn and getting any 3 cards is pretty awesome. Obviously, you want to continue to loop your Froslasses, and you're going to want to get your Cyllenes and Lusamines somewhat early. This deck is a looping deck down to the very core. You're not a looping deck that's going to go down to 0 cards in deck, something like a Bunnelby control, but you are going to loop cards consistently. 3 copies of Lusamine, put 2 of any combination of supporter and stadium cards from this cabal into your hand. So, you want to recycle your Cyllenes, maybe your Klara, Irida, or your Handiwork. And then your stadiums are also quite good. 2 copies of Cyllene, flip 2 coins, put a number of cards equal to a number of heads from your cabal on top of your deck. This is probably my newest addition to, like, what makes this deck different from, previous people who've probably built this deck in the past. And this allows you to effectively infinitely recycle Life Dew. And that's what the goal is going to be in this deck, because Froslass, at the end of the day, is not going to get heads all of the time. You're going to flip probably 1 out of 6 heads with how PTCGO coin flips go. So you're going to need to just use Cyllene to continually recycle Life Dew. Don't give your opponent any chances for prizes. And we'll get down to the cards that kind of help that combo in a minute. But Cyllene is great. I've been testing it. I absolutely love Cyllene in this deck. It's been a joy. And as I said, since it goes to the number, or the number of heads goes to the top of your deck, we want to play these cards to instantly draw that card if need be. 2 copies of Gladion. Look at your face down prize cards and put one of them into your hand, then shuffle Gladion into your remaining prize cards, putting them back face down. So you want to get pieces. This is a control deck. You are taking prizes in this deck as a control deck, so Gladion you could go down to a 1 of potentially if you did not feel it was as necessary, and I could see that. But a lot of times early game you want to hit it. Okay then. So the 2 copies of Gladion here, you use that early game to get your pieces out. Mainly your Life Dew if it's prized. You absolutely cannot have that prized. Prized Lusamines and Cylenes can be problematic, as well as dolls. So there's a lot of very, very live prizes in this deck. So that's why I still play 2, even though you could get away with 1 because you do take prizes. 1 copy of Irida. This is something I'm testing. Not sure if it's great. I really wanted to play greens in this deck, but because you have basic abilities, especially if you end up starting the Puke, and if you have Froslass in play, Irida allows you to search a water Pokemon and item, where green will turn off if you don't have if you have any abilities in play. So Irida gives you a better starting card. And what I use this for is to just get like a Froslass and a Snorunt, and then to tool any of the items. Sometimes it's just going to be a doll, simple as. A lot of times it's going to be for Adventure Bag and Eco Arm. These are the 2 most important pieces in the looping cycle, other than Cyllene. Alrighty, so 1 copy of Klara here. Choose 1 or both, and you're only going to use the first one. Put up to 2 Pokemon from Sky into your hand. Just allows you to keep chaining Froslass. In an emergency, grabs Unown. I've been really considering Nessa in here, and just kind of like saying Unown's only getting Rescue Carrier. But in a pinch, Klara can, in your starting hand, act as an Unown recovery to just draw into some more cards. So that's why I'm playing Klara currently. If you want to play Nessa, go ahead. I do think you want a supporter that you can loop with like Burst Seeker and all that to recover your Pokemon though, because 4 Rescue Carrier is really not enough. So 1 copy of Team Rocket's Handiwork. Flip 2 coins. For each heads, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. What we're going to do is that some matchups are just not going your way. I faced a Dark Box deck the other day where I went 9 for 9 on Dragalong Tails, and it was like, alright, well, I guess this is turning into a mill game. So then you use Lusamine and Handiwork, just repeatedly recycle the flip 2 coins for each head, discard the top cards of your opponent's deck over and over again until you hopefully deck your opponent out. And this deck is actually able to keep your opponent stuck quite a bit. Obviously, if your Dragalongs aren't working, you're not slowing your opponent down at all, but you can slow them down with prizes with your dolls that we'll get to in a minute. 4 copies of Level Ball. Search deck for a Pokemon with 90 HP or less. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Searches every Pokemon in the deck, so it's a no-duh to play that. I have 2 copies of Dive Ball here. Search deck for a Water Pokemon. Reveal it. Put it into your hand. Searches everything but Unown. You don't really want to search Unown, though. Unown's only for those specific turns where you can get it back with Rescue Carrier after you've already used it to, to use your Cyllene and grab it. But Pyukumuku does the same thing. So, 4 copies of Lillie's Pokédoll. Played as if it was a 30 HP basic Pokemon. The unique thing about Lillie's Pokédoll is that if it's your active, you can discard all cards attached to it and then recycle it to the bottom of your deck. Robosub is a little bit worse. You play it as 30 HP basic, but you can just at any time discard it from play. You're never going to discard it from play, but there's an option. And you play fully maxed out 8 counts of dolls, because this deck is a doll stall deck in that way. You're going to just endlessly throw your opponent dolls until you can throw them another Froslass with a Life Dew. Because that's the goal. You're not using like Rescue Scarf on Froslass. You're going to just throw your opponent Frost with the Life Dew every few turns, and in that meantime, you're just going to keep on recycling dolls. We have 2 copies of Adventure Bag here. Search your deck for up to 2 Pokemon tool cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. As I've stressed, these tool cards are very good. Rescue Scarf and Life Dew. We'll get there in a minute. 2 copies of Eco Arm. Shuffle 3 Pokemon tools from your cabal into your deck. With Adventure Bag and Eco Arm and Cyllene and Lusamine, you have an infinite loop of your Life Dews and access to them. You also want to be recycling Rescue Scarf. That's why we play Eco Arm over something like Lana's Fishing Rod. Rescue Scarf is a great card. We'll get there in a minute. 4 copies of Rescue Carrier. Put up to 2 Pokemon, each with 90 HP or less, from this spell into your hand. So use this to get back your whole Froslass 9, your unknowns if you need them. If Puke gets discarded and you need to get it back, like if you start Puke, then that's also doable. It's mainly here for these fellas, though. So great for drawing with unknown to use your Cyllene. Great for just recycling Froslass, though Klara also does that. Yeah, it's a good card. You should play 4 copies of it. I wouldn't play any less. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from your squad into your hand. We use this to tutor all of our incredible supporters. A lot of times it's just going to be used for Klara and Handiwork, cards that you do not want to Lusamine back. Same with Irida. Sometimes Irida just gets you the specific pieces you need in that case, and you didn't Lusamine it back prior because you weren't planning on needing those pieces. So Irida can get those in a pinch. 4 copies of Rescue Scarf, arguably the second most important card in the deck behind the Life Dew. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out, put the Pokemon into your hand. This includes the dolls, by the way. So what you're going to often do is throw up a doll with Rescue Scarf, get it knocked out, get the doll back, Rescue Scarf gets discarded, and you do that until, like I said, you do that until you send up a Froslass with the Life Dew. You never want to put more than one Snorunt in play, and you never want to put a Snorunt in play without a Life Dew, except in the very early game where it's not big giving up prizes. But what you want to do is just continually loop the dolls with the effect of Eco Arm, Rescue Scarf, Adventure Bag, and Cyllene. You can continually loop these Rescue Scarves to never lose too many dolls, and you can just keep looping it. I kept one opponent at 1 prize, despite the fact they were attacking every single turn for like 20 turns. I ended up losing the game because I flipped like 5 tails in a row on Cyllene, and all of my drag-alongs were tails for like that entire game, so I had to end up going down the mill route, and we all know how bad Handiwork is. Worst card in Expanded, but you have to play it. But yeah, you can like just endlessly loop these dolls, and that's what you're aiming for. 1 copy of Life Dew. If the Pokemon this card's attached to is knocked out, your opponent takes 1 for your prize. This is for the Froslass. You send up a Snorunt, evolve into Froslass, have a Life Dew already on there, and then it just does not give up a prize. Again, you lose to Shadow Rider because they play around the drag-along, and they play Faba anyway, so decks that play Faba are just gonna, you know, obviously roll through this deck. This deck is going to do well against very linear decks. Think Volcarona or Serena or Meloetta Genesect is a great one, as well as well, actually, Meloetta Genesect can be problematic because Drag Along doesn't work for it, but you can stall them and mill them, which I have done before. So that's like a 50-50, I guess, depending on how you set up. Some other matchups, maybe. I beat a Turbo Dialga V-Star deck because they landed 2 heads with their 2 extra turns on Drag Along, and I just took 4 prizes. That was very entertaining. So yeah, Life Dew's good. You just recycle it endlessly. That's the story. Now this is a card you can swap. I have 3 copies of Jubilife Village. Once during your turn, once during either player's turn, they can shuffle their hand to the deck and draw 5, and then their turn ends. So use this to continually get your pieces. Steven's Resolve is good for building up a hand, though a lot of times you're just going to, if you're not Cylening or Lusamining, you're just going to Jubilife Village to get more cards, especially if you have a low count in your deck of cards. What you'd prefer here, though, is Tropical Beach. Tropical Beach is a card, one of the most expensive cards, I believe, on PTCGO. Might be the most expensive. Here it is. Once during either player turn, that player may draw until they have 7 cards in hand. If he or she does, that player's turn ends. This card is expensive. I cannot afford Tropical Beach, so we have to say Jubilife Village will suffice. If you have Tropical Beach, play Tropical Beach. I don't have Tropical Beach. 1 copy of Sky Pillar. Prevent all effects of your opponent's decks, including damage done to bench Pokemon. This doesn't stop Shadow Rider's 5 pings, but it does stop a lot of things. Not really played anymore, but think Hammerhead or Jet Punch on like Buzzwole and Landorus, or think, I guess there's the new you know, the Zarude V, I guess, has the same attacks. That's the first thing that comes to mind. There's some attacks that still matter. Jolteon, VMAX, for instance, could be a pain if taking out multiple Pokemon. Again, you're just gonna, like, can't win against some decks. Like, Inteleon decks will give you trouble, and they aren't good and expanded for the most part, but you see them a lot because of standard players playing expanded with the Inteleon engine decks, because they just don't really adapt their lists to actually be expanded decks. And those unfortunately will beat you. Shadow Rider will beat you because of the ever horrifying 5 pings that just ruin every control deck. But yeah, this is my list with Froslass. Get a little lucky. Don't flip coins like I do on PTCGO. My god, drag along is bad when you have my flipping skills on PTCGO. And have a little fun looping some dolls for like 60 turns. Thank you all so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this, check out my other deck profiles. And I'll see you in the next one.